Thank you, Mr. Kai. Thank you for being here. So we're very fortunate to have someone here from the union, the Singapore Teachers Union. So I think for many of us, we know about the organization, but we would really like to hear more from you that what the organization is able to do for teachers today.
It's our privilege to be here today, co-organizing this really meaningful event with One Youth. I want to start by saying that the STU has been around since 1946. We built on a legacy by our forebears, founded upon the need to protect and promote our staff, teachers, and teaching. It's so important to remember that in today's context, much of what you do as educators goes unrecorded. Every act of kindness that you give to your students, your colleagues, parents, guardians, and even your supervisors goes unrecorded. And for that reason alone, much of what you do requires you to give of yourselves effortlessly. At the union, we recognize that this indeed is the vocation, the calling of a teacher. You sacrifice yourselves so that the future of your country can be a little bit brighter, a little bit better. But this sacrifice cannot be ungoverned. You have rights as teachers, and as your union, we are here to ensure that your rights are not compromised. So at the union, I run a team of career coaches, industrial officers, counselors, and we are hoping to expand our services this year to include legal aid as well. The point is this: we're not here to challenge the system per se. We're not here to run counterproductive ideas. We're not here to bring down anybody. We're here to ensure that whatever you do in school remains intact without compromising your rights as officers, your dignity as people.
So can you please share your favorite success union story that resolved a teacher's concern?
So when I first got this question, I was actually quite troubled by the phrasing of it. As a unionist, whatever troubles that come through our doors, whatever success, in inverted commas, that we achieve involves people, people's lives. I don't have a favorite story because every story is a tragic one. I joined the union in 2020. I resigned from MOE in 2019. You will forgive me for getting emotional. In 2020, an elderly lady came through our doors when I was on duty during COVID. It was very late. It was 4:45 p.m. She came in. She was unwell. She was asking for union support because she was being victimized in school by a school leader. She received a D performance grade and she felt very aggrieved by it. I was on duty. I supported her through that performance grade appeal process. 1 year later, 2021, she shared with me that she was dying from cancer. As a pensioner, her number one worry was whether or not the pension that she had worked so hard for would be passed on to her next of kin. As a fairly young man myself, my heart went out to this member. And in the last year of her life, I had the great honor, the great privilege of working with MOE to ensure that her dying wish was indeed materialized. I was at her home doing a home visit when MOE and Vital called to ask about the pension. I was under very strict orders by MOE that I cannot coach her for this call. She had to answer the questions on her own. But lo and behold, if you believe in whatever you believe in, God works in mysterious ways. I was there when the call came in. She took up the call. She said, "Hang on a minute, huh?" She put the caller on speaker mode and she whispered to me, "Help me answer the questions," which I did very gamely. I had the great privilege of attending her wake, where I presented the family with the NTUC gift, which is a life insurance that all members receive. And this is a story or an anecdote that grounds me all the time. Because frankly, educators, it is my personal belief that you are more than teachers. You are a sentient being You're so important to the people who care for you, who matter to you. And nobody deserves to die on the job without dignity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kai. So I think that's a story we will all carry. Yes, thank you so much.
By the way, let's keep the story to ourselves. Yeah, it's a deeply personal one. And indeed, not many of us in the labor movement have the privilege of supporting a member all the way to the grave.
Yeah. But it's so warm to know that teachers have that support in the union, and that if they are in a challenging situation, they can turn to the union. And so that's so reassuring. So thank you for sharing that deep felt story. On another note, perhaps if we can shift the attention, I wonder if you could share with many of the educators who are present today, what seems to be some of the challenges that teachers seem to come to the union towards, not recognizing necessarily their own maybe misgivings, and that sometimes leads to certain situations. So if you could explore and maybe educate us in that process, some of the misgivings on the part of teachers.
So in the work that we do on a daily basis, we service members in a variety of manners, right? Number one, we get very routine phone calls asking about very mundane, prosaic things. How do I apply for no pay leave? When is the opening window for annual posting exercise? It has begun already, if you are not aware. Then sometimes the queries become a lot more severe, a lot more complex in nature. So true, absolutely true call. My reporting officer leaned over during work review meeting and adjusted my collar and then tapped me on the shoulder. I'm not too sure if that counts as sexual harassment. Yeah, in the same vein, I was summoned to a meeting room with the school leaders. They locked the door. They insisted that I sign a document declaring that I would like to step down. I have signed the document. What can I do now? We get a variety of calls across the spectrum of complexity, fundamentally because teachers, when you sign your name on the dotted line, oftentimes you really do not know what are your rights as employees of the public service, and you do not know what are the resources and the support network available to you out there as a union member. One of the very first things we have to do is to help the member or the caller recognize that whatever he or she has experienced, whatever he or she is feeling or thinking, is his or her reality. A fair amount of gaslighting happens every day in schools. And that is one of the reasons why I resigned. I do not like the fact that teachers are being gaslit all the time, being convinced that there is an alternative reality where roses are red, violets are blue, unicorns dance around and prance on rainbows. The reality in school is harsh, fast and furious, hurly-burly, rally slow and steady. And oftentimes teachers are given the shorter end of the stick. We need our teachers to recognize that they have rights, that they have resources, they have support network, and therefore the first thing is we never nullify their truth. Number two, at the union, we explore options. We help everybody to recognize that you are in a place of power to make your own decision. And sometimes that choice can be fairly hard. In my case, it was about tendering resignation. But that option is yours to exercise because you are a sentient being and you can choose for yourselves. One of the saddest things I hear all the time, Chinmaya, is, I have no choice. My HOD said so. My principal is very scary. I really have no choice. I beg to disagree. All of us have the right to choose. And that is why we are here as a union, to help you process through those options to make the most defensible choice for yourself today.
So, Mr. Kai, your conversation is exciting a lot of the audience, and lots of questions are just flooding in, and I'm not sure if we can handle all, but we will start with the first question posed by Shu Hui. And her question to you is, what is being done by STU about the hope for smaller class size in our current systems?
Hi, Shu Hui. Thank you for asking that really important question. We went on a learning journey recently to Melbourne. I was a former secondary school and JC teacher. I will say this to you very honestly. In JC, when I had my first civics group, I was over the moon. Only 24 students. No problem. When I went to secondary school as a HOD, I had 3 English classes, 2 lit classes. The other way around. 2 EL and 3 lit classes. I almost died. The marking was unbearably tough. The lesson planning was just backbreakingly difficult. And when I look around and ask, how do we do this? The response was, it's not about class sizes. It's about maximizing resources. Everybody does a little bit, yeah? Truthfully, as a professional, I've never bought that argument. At the union, we too are still campaigning for smaller class sizes. This is a campaign that we'll continue to march on. But I need you to also hear the other side of the table. All right? I'm not here to advocate for anybody, but this is the counter-argument. The counter-argument is that MOE is very well-resourced. There are many teachers residing within education, and owing to larger manpower staffing needs, there remains pockets and sectors in our economy that requires talent. Talent that MOE is very privileged, very lucky to have gobbled up and hoard. Yeah? There's pressure, I believe, on MOE to release talent in whatever ways they can. And that is why, therefore, the reduction of class sizes will continue to be an uphill battle. It would be. I'm not going to mince my words. But does it mean that we'll stop campaigning? Answer is no. We'll carry on campaigning for it. Okay?
Okay, this might be an interesting question. Well, the name is not quite clear at this point, but I'll just go with the question. What's your view of the existence of performance bonus? Schools are not profit-making corporations, and students and parents are not our customers. But the existence of PB has pushed public education into the profit-making realm.
I'm not too sure if I agree entirely that PB is about profit-making, but I do have my reservations as well about performance appraisal and how it's linked to performance grade and PB by extension. I really think that it's time for us as a fraternity to really look at how we assess each other and what we are exactly prioritizing when we assess teachers. At the union, we annually service performance grade appeals. It's one of those things that we do with a great deal of head, heart, and tears. Early this year, January, a retired officer and I went to see Superintendent, HR, over performance grade. I shall not name the officer, all right, or any of the people involved, but this particular member received her very first C- in some 40 years of service to MOE. She received her very first C- in the year of retirement. The officer, the member, was able to show the union through very robust documentation 10 years of C grades or better prior to 2022. When we went in for the appeal meeting, a lot of good was announced about the members' pedagogy, curriculum content, contributions to the department, IP work. But the feedback from the school was that the officer of GO5 subgrade did not quite lead or mentor younger officers as expected by the school, to which I then ask, was the officer deployed to lead anything by the school? Was the officer assigned any kind of duty involving mentorship by the school? The answer was a resoundingly, deafeningly no. Wherein is the social justice? You're telling me that you're getting a C minus because the officer wasn't able to lead, but the officer wasn't deployed to lead. You're telling me the officer can't mentor, but the officer wasn't given the chance to mentor. And this, to me, is the problem right now with performance appraisal. It is so easy for your supervisors to go through the year and identify things to bring you down. It's very easy. Retrospectively, it is very easy to find reasons to take any officer down. And that is why, for appraisal purposes, as officers, we need to allocate time, resources, we must be strategic, we must be unwieldingly strategic when it comes to reporting of our work. If your RO doesn't want to meet you for work review meeting, you hunt him or her down like the Red October. Sit that person down and say, here are my goals, here are my strategies, you tell me now, where do I stand? If your RO says to you things like, oh, I don't know, it's a ranking panel decision, I can't quite predict, then tell your RO, go find out. Ask the countersigning officer. You need to know that that is your right as an employee. Do not let your ROs hoodwink you or blow smoke bombs lah. Okay?
Thank you. So we still have so many questions flooding, so I'm going to try to narrow it down to the last two perhaps. So one of the questions that we have, this is really quite an interesting question, and I'm sure many teachers here would like to know the answer. Does STU plan to include preschool teachers who are non-MOE as part of the union? Because there's a lot of focus on early childcare now, and there are many early childcare teachers who are truly doing the grounding, the literary seeding and the foundational work, and for them to be under the umbrella protection of the union makes sense. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, so at the union, we hold regular tea sessions with MOE HR, and we have dialogues directly with Deputy Secretary of Services. So interestingly, our recent tea session was about the preschool sector at
Nice.
MOE kindergartens,
Fantastic.
looking at the working hours, the conditions of, and the salary of
Fabulous.
our kindergarten teachers. But I regret to inform that STU is a gazetted union. We are bound to our constitution, and therefore our members only, must be MOE educators. So if you're a preschool teacher or a childcare teacher beyond MOE, your relevant union would be the Education Services Union, not STU.
All right, so then the last question for the day then. So what are STU's future goals and priorities in advancing the teaching profession and improving the overall quality of education in Singapore? So
That's
maybe,
a very loaded question,
Yes.
and I would not profess to answer this because I'm only the Assistant General Secretary.
Yes.
All right, this is a question that only my boss can answer, right, Mr. Mike Thiruman?
perhaps if
But
I can.
But I do want to respond to this, echoing Mike's words. I think foremost on our mind really is this recognition, as Sadhguru mentioned earlier, right? The really important role that teachers play. Fully concur this idea, this notion of everlasting, unconditional love that teachers shower upon their young charges. So important to everything that you do. So important to authenticate what you do with love. But I think therein lies the clincher for us at the union. How do we draw that line in the sand? Ultimately, that child goes home to a family of sorts. Ultimately, somebody in that family has to make a call for that child. At some point, that child has to do a little bit of growing up and make his or her own decisions. I think number one on our mind right now is teachers are taking on way too much responsibility for their students. And this comes out in performance appraisal. Student outcomes, right? You report whatever that you've done. But whatever that you've done has to be complemented with a fair degree of initiative by the young people. So number one would be this, the roles that society expects teachers to play. The fact that now in schools, our teachers don't just teach IP subjects, they are form teachers who perform pastoral care, they have to teach character, grow citizens, they have to run a CCA, a committee, they have to look after school programming, at the same time support ECG counseling, and the list continues. The point is this: are teachers supposed to do all of these things evenly, competently? Is this a reasonable, sustainable expectation? How many of our comrades, our fellow teachers, have we lost to burnout, depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues, plus physical ailments, because of the never-ending list of expectations placed on them by society, by parents? How do we help society to recognize that the children that they send to school ultimately are their children, not the teacher's children? And that every teacher has the right to go home before 5 p.m. to spend time with their own children. Yeah. Next on our list of priorities is workload. Right? It's a concurrent concern in relation to different roles that teachers play. The workload of teachers. How do we ensure that the workload grows in a meaningful way without burdening teachers?
Thank you, Mr. Kai.